quick, do you think you could go ahead and introduce yourself really quick?
Yeah, yeah. So my name is Trevor. I am the author and creator for Veil of the Void Reforged. Now, I guess, because we just got Reforged done. Um, so yeah, that's pretty much me.
Okay. And just a quick background, Veil of Void is a tabletop role-playing game that merges kind of sci-fi and fantasy realms together in order to create a very unique experience. I was an original backer to the Kickstarter campaign. That's how I found out about it in the first place. And I've been running a campaign with my core group of friends now for probably the better part of 8 months or so.
Which
I
is
have a
awesome.
personal blast. I have a blast with it, and I just figured that talking with the creator would be a good way to kind of find out about this game's development and what the kind of plans for the future are. So, Trevor, do you think you could tell me a little bit about how did you get this game started? What was the initial concept, and how long did it take you to develop?
Okay, so it's always actually a really funny story because I started developing it. Oh, what? I'm almost 28, so almost 18 years ago. And it was originally set up to actually be, well, I was going to plan for it to be a online game, so like
Okay.
a MMO,
Oh
role
wow.
playing game. Yeah, that's what I wanted to originally have it, and it was actually starting out to be just a pure fantasy idea. But then as I grew older, I realized I didn't want to go to school to learn all of the design stuff, have to go through all that. Um, but around when I was like 13 or 14, my friends and I started playing tabletop games. So I started really enjoying those. And then, what, 5 years ago, I took my idea and said, well, let's try it in another system to see if I could get at least the universe going. And so I used another system, Savage Worlds. I don't know if you've ever heard about that one.
That one I haven't actually.
It was an okay system. It kind of worked for what I wanted, but then I wanted something more because I wanted the rules to be something even better and fit my idea even more. And then it somehow within it jumped from being a fantasy game to a sci-fi fantasy game, and I don't know how the jump happened, but it did. Uh, and then Veil of the Void came out of a lot of testing and work and coming up with rules that I was like, I would enjoy this.
Okay.
Because it kind of came out of, I guess, I always joke with people, I'm like, it came out of a selfish idea because I wanted the game for myself and to make something fun. So,
Yeah, well, something that I've noticed from playing this is that there's a lot of flexibility. I mean, you even have a note in the core rulebook as it currently is that like if one of these rules doesn't work for you, like tweak it so that way it's something that you enjoy.
mhm.
What do you think is the importance of having that level of freedom for both GMs and players in this case?
Well, I think it's important. Just whenever I was hosting campaigns, with other systems, especially, I felt kind of limited about it by things. And I don't think it was really the system's fault because it's really hard to balance chaos. Which I tried to do the best in this game that I could, uh, which I feel like I did pretty well with it, especially with the
I
new
would say
update.
so, yeah.
Especially with the new update. But uh, the importance to me is that you really shouldn't be limited by rules. It should be much more both the GM and the players just doing everything they can to have fun with it. And I always never wanted my system to be like, oh, this has to be this way, otherwise the game won't be, you know, balanced or people won't get to do stuff with it. I really wanted rules to be more of a side, like sit on the side while the story is prominent. So
Okay. Well, do you think that you could maybe walk me through a little bit and just tell people how is the system of Veil of Void? I know that it uses a D6 system,
mhm.
which it, being a primarily D&D player myself, it did take me a little while to get used
Yeah.
to rolling a D20 to the D6s. But just tell somebody how the game works necessarily.
Okay, so well, on the very basics, as far as rules go, you have what are called virtues, which are if you've ever played D&D or a lot of other games, it's kind of like your character's attributes, so like strength, power, finesse, vitality, all those different breakdowns. And then that number that you get determines how many base D6 dice that you roll with. And then from there, you're trying to get 5 and 6 results while avoiding ones and twos. So that's the very basic system, and you're trying to meet a difficulty with those fives and sixes, and the difficulty requires you to have, like, if it's easy, it requires you to have two of those fives and sixes. If it's anything higher than that, it grows exponentially.
Right. And let me tell you that you gotta love it when your wizard character is just rolling casually 10 dice just to see if
Yeah.
you can pass something he only needs 4 for. So
Yep.
just overall, it just from my experience, it has really kind of opened up overall possibilities, especially when you throw in, like, oh well, they can, even if they get everything right, they don't have enough to pass the checks. And then as a GM, you have to kind of think on the fly, like, okay, so how do they
Yeah.
succeed but still fail in the process? Like, how can they try this again? Uh, uh, I guess I know, like, unfortunate success, I think, is one of my
Oh
favorite
yeah.
terms that you have in the core rulebook. Could you maybe throw out a quick example of an unfortunate success that you've either seen or that you've used personally, just to kind of keep the game moving so that people don't get hung up on failure?
Yeah. So I actually had a player. My test groups have been ridiculous because I'm really bad at saying no as a GM because I just like seeing all the crazy stuff happen. So I rarely say no to stuff, which just leads to absolute insanity. But one player was trying to summon a massive void worm to help fight a fleet, uh, which was an insane idea because they can't control void worms. But that aside, um, uh, she kept trying to summon it, and it didn't work. Uh, and so we used an unfortunate success to allow her to summon a void word that goes in and out of combat, but doesn't target anyone in particular. So they also didn't know when the void worm was going to show up. So they had to kind of try to avoid the portal that was spastically opening and
Oh
closing.
no. You weren't kidding with it's chaos. Everything with this game
Mhm.
can be so chaotic and so much fun at the same time.
Yeah,
Well, I was also wondering. I know that you said that initially you were using Savage Worlds as one of
yeah.
your primary influences. Do you think you could tell me a little bit about what has influenced you in the creation of this game? And then now that we're going into Reforged when it comes out, and I believe
Mhm.
you said the ETA on that is February, right?
I'm hoping, yeah. It depends on if I get a little bit more money. I'm trying to add as much art and editing to the new book as I can because I don't want to have to redo it all again.
Okay.
Or
Well,
add more to it again.
right. Well, so just kind of walk me through, like, what are the major influences when it came to developing this game? And I guess if you had to try to describe it to somebody that is brand new, if you had to pull a similarity, what do you think would be like the closest thing that's similar to Veil?
So the a lot of the inspiration, I don't really know where it came from. I just kind of threw it all in there to see if it would work, and then a lot of times it didn't, so I had to retry. But I did end up reading over 200 rule books to make
Oh,
sure I wasn't copying rules because I didn't want to just be another rule book that
right.
copied everything. But if I had to compare it for new people, what I would say Shadowrun is one
Okay.
of the closest games, just due to the fact that they also use D6s.
Okay.
They're still very different, like incredibly different, but if for someone who knows a little bit about role playing games, Shadowrun would probably be the closest, followed shortly after probably by D&D.
Okay. Well, so now let's talk a little bit about Reforged. I know that the goal is to try to get that out by February, and as
Mhm.
far as I'm aware, you've had a couple of successful Kickstarter campaigns for getting the initial rule book out, and now we have Reforged coming out, which is an overall, like, kind of massive overhaul of
Mhm.
systems. You're adding in, I believe, a couple of new races, a couple of new classes, perhaps. Tell people a little bit about what Reforged is going to do for this game.
Okay, so I'm actually super excited about Reforged because now that I have more money that I can invest personally, as well as what we got from the Kickstarter, I can go through and not so much remake the book because I'm not really removing anything per se. I'm just adding another like 50 pages or so of just massive new content. I went through and I've done even more research on various artists and taken time to work with them and get more artwork for the book. I've worked with additional editors and taken almost what was it? I took like I think a collective of like 3 months just to fully re-edit the book myself and redesign it all.
Right.
Um, and so I'm really excited about Reforged because it's not a rework and changing the rules and you have to relearn everything as it is just an addition. So I would say it's not even really a new edition, and if it was, it'd be like a 1.5
Mhm.
versus like a 2, like a second edition. So
Yeah.
the I wanted really to make something that you don't have to like fully get rid of your old books, so, or you can give it to someone who doesn't want to, they don't know much about role-playing games, and so you can give them the old book while you use the new book, and you guys can still use kind of the same rules back and forth, at least the core rules. So
Right. Well, so what do you think is going to be the biggest addition to Reforged in that case? I know that from the times that we've talked, it seems largely like GM tips are going to be
yeah,
a massive addition.
yeah, so I added another 10 pages, I think, out of the 50, or like 15 pages into the GM section, just to give GMs even more control over the chaos without limiting players or their creativity or the GM's creativity. So I went through and added, oh my gosh, I added so many things, and I'm super excited to show everyone. Uh, like one of the biggest things being the player background creator for GMs.
Okay.
And it goes super in depth into creating character backgrounds. It gives, like, I think it gives a total of 4 questions to players, but those questions are broken down into minor questions that let them answer and give them ideas. Um, and then on top of that, they're asked a 5th question if they're arcanting, and about like 5, 6 more questions if they're a noble. So it's a huge 3-page guide of creating uh, like that awesome background for characters, especially for people who aren't like the best at creating backgrounds
Right.
and need a little bit of help. It gives them like full on inspiration. But then on the side of that, after they answer the questions, it also gives the GM a ton of tools to use to include their background.
Okay.
That's the one I'm the best, like most excited about.
I can tell you as a GM, I'm also very excited about that. Something that I personally like doing is I like making a story feel personal for a player.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, just a quick note to the campaign that I'm running, we actually just had one of my players is an exile who, just for the sake of brevity, he has come back. He was shot in the back of the head, doesn't know who did it, and he wants revenge. He actually just recently had a moment where he found somebody else that he'd been serving in a unit with, and one of the enemies that had helped kill him working together, and he had this kind of just conundrum on, where do I want to go now?
I love it.
So, so I think those tips are going to be very useful for me. Normally, I really like my players having fleshed out backgrounds, and like now that there's going to be more tools to kind of help flesh that out. I'm personally really looking forward to that, and I'm sure that other GMs that if they pick up this book, they will probably be doing the same as well. And then I guess another big question I have for you then is, so once Reforged comes out, what are your plans for the future of Veil of the Void?
All right, so once Reforged comes out, we're gonna take like a little bit of time for mass marketing and all that fun stuff, just to get the name out there and grow our great community, because it's been so much fun to see the Discord and people have ideas on there, especially like you and your group. You guys like to post a lot of stuff, so it's fun to read all that. But I really want to grow it even more and get more people to join the community. And then outside of that, the next thing we're working on is a Veil of the Void Norse expansion
Oh, wow.
called Yggdrasil. So
Okay.
that'll be fun. That's actually something my co-author is primarily working on right now, and she's come up with some crazy stuff. So pretty much, just imagine all the Norse stuff, but in space.
So is this going to be kind of like another rulebook expansion, or is this going to?
Yes, it's
Okay.
going to be a brand new printable rulebook that people will be able to buy. That's going to include like, I think somewhere upwards of a new like 8 or 9 new species. Each species from the core rulebook also gets a sub species class that they can choose now.
Oh wow.
All the various different classes in the rulebook also get a new specialization that is Norse themed. There's all sorts of new stuff for the GM, so new realms, new lore, uh, all sorts of fancy new items. My favorite being a starship that you can fold up like a napkin and then unfold it, because Norse mythology is just super weird.
I mean, you said it earlier. This game can just be absolute chaos, and I love every moment of it. So it seems like we've got a lot to look forward to in the near future. So with this new rule book that's going to be coming out, would you say that it would be similar to like when Wizards of the Coast added like the Sword Coast Adventures, kind of like supplement to their fifth edition?
Kind of, yeah. So it's definitely gonna complement the rule book, and we plan to actually, when it's done, sell a joint copy of both the core rule book and the Yggdrasil together
Oh, that's fascinating.
for like a cheaper price, so people can get both together. Um, and then it's going to be super cool though to just see Yggdrasil, because we're not wanting it to be so much just like a small, like, oh yeah, it adds some cool new things. We wanted like massive expansion that gives you a ridiculous amount, because we don't go small when we do this creation, to the point where I think we're even including a module in
Oh
there.
wow. Okay.
Yeah. I think she said she was working on a module, and so we're super excited about that,
Okay.
to see what that's going to be like. I have no clue how crazy it's going to be, but
Okay. Well, I know that also just to kind of round this out, I know that in private conversation between you and myself, you mentioned that you wanted to try keeping the core rule book to just one book rather than selling it.
Mhm.
I know, like, I'm just going to default to D&D because it's what I know best, but the three main books that you need for that
Mhm.
are your Dungeon Master Guide, your Player Handbook, and your Monster Manual. However, you chose to just keep everything compiled into one book. I was just wondering if you might be able to tell me a little bit as to why that was the case here.
The main reason was when I GM'd Dungeons and Dragons, I had to spend like over $100 on everything, and I was like, I don't want people to have to do that. Like, especially with like our spell cards that we just got. I didn't want, people to have to go out there and spend over like $200 if a GM wants to get every single card deck. I wanted it to be about 30, and you get every spell in the game. So it's really just because I like people. I was like, I didn't. I mean, I'm in it to get money, of course, just so I can make more things. But that's not my primary focus. It's people, especially the community, because like I love you guys. You're all my like reason for making it. So I'm not gonna charge an arm and a leg just to play the game. Plus, it's so much easier, especially if you're a newer GM, to just have everything in one book.
I can definitely agree to that. I've only DM'd a couple of times before I'm running Veil, but you've got a lot of good tips in there for tweaking rules if needed, and creating content. Um,
Plus the lore, it gives you so much lore in there,
and
of all the different things.
I just love the fact that you also encourage people that if they want to tweak things to make it fit for the
Mm-hmm.
universe that they want to run, to just go for it. I know that personally, I'm already doing that. For instance, I have it so the aspects, or as other games refer to them as gods in this, they're just missing.
That's
Most
great.
people, there's only like one or two that are actually active, and they don't have many followers at this time. So now my guys are trying to bring them back.
I
So
love it. It's such a fan. I love when people mess with the universe. But the best thing is I don't know why I'm doing this, because it's gonna take forever. But I'm working on a living timeline on the website, because I say that I like to have fun saying that everybody's game that they're running are all connected, even regardless of how crazy they are, because of how our timelines work and how the multiverse acts. So I like to say that regardless of how crazy everybody's idea is, it's still set within the same kind of universe. And so I want to make a timeline that takes people's games, and they can add kind of their points of what happens
okay.
in the universe in the whole.
Okay.
that's
Well,
something I just want to do in the future, but it sounds like fun.
yeah. Okay, well, I guess now's just a time for a shameless plug. So, if people want to get involved with Veil, what are some ways that they can do so? Can they find you on social media?
All right, so the very best place that compiles everything is if you go to sdgcreatives.com. That has everything on there. But you can also find us on Twitter at publisherssdg. And then we also have an Instagram, which is at veilthevoid18 now.
Okay.
And then we have Facebook, which is facebook.com/veilthevoid. We're pretty easy. You can just search up Veil of the Void and you'll find it real fast on Google because it's nobody else really has the name.
Yeah,
So,
and do you want to go ahead and plug the Discord while you're at it too?
oh yeah, and then we have a Discord, Veil of the Void's Discord. It's on the website too in big bold letters. You can see the Discord and join. But it's been great having the Discord. There's just a ton of amazing people on there, and we'd love to
I
have more.
I definitely agree. I mean, that's how I started talking to you in the first place. And I know that I've had ideas that haven't panned out, and it's a great community resource if you need to either work on something or try to learn a little bit about the game. There's a lot of people that are wanting to talk to you there.
Yep, and I'm the one that runs all of the social media and the Discord. So anybody that wants to talk to me can find me that way. Usually Discord's the quickest, but
Okay.